I mean, I saw some readings up around 30, 40, 50, and then it pulled back down and just ridiculous. Like, readings have never seen this high before. Not in our modern era, but I'm sure something in the past has gone through the same cycle. So what's the Schumann resonance at right now?
ADAPT 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum. In the media, overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output. But very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time: cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David DuByne.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are on this planet. I have Kate Hart, the Radical Gardener, with me. You can find her work at radicalgardener.net, katehart.com.
I really don't look at it, and I'll tell you why. Our brain tries to reset every 90 minutes to 7.83. I mean, we're really a part of this. And so when I work with it, and I'll tell you how I work with it and how I broke it down in just a minute. You know, the whole thing is about really grounding us. I mean, we are living in a third dimensional reality. I know most people would rather float around in the fourth and fifth dimension. They like that feeling better. But really, we're in a third dimensional reality. We're here to experience fully what's going on around us. So we need to be really stable and really grounded and be a real part of this. And it's really about creating a coherent system, so where the interior the interior part of the body and the outer body, the energetic systems, where they really become coherent with each other, which allows the body to heal. So if you take the Schumann resonance, and I always liked the idea of it, but I always wanted to break it down so I could find out what the harmonics were within the Schumann resonance, which would give me a musical scale, right? So I worked with a mathematician out of New Zealand, and he figured out mathematically what the harmonics were, notes that were within the Schumann frequency. And so what I ended up with was a earth resonant musical scale. So what we tune it's a universal tuning to use 440. 440 is very disruptive to the system. Now, there's rumors that the Nazis worked with it and they found it was really disruptive. And then in the 50s, we adopted it worldwide to tune all, instruments to 440. The only instruments that didn't tune to 440 were really instruments that were more acoustic and, part of like indigenous cultures. So once I had that scale broken out, done with the mathematics, the tuning was actually 450. And 4 and 5 is 9. So now we're back into the sacred geometry. 4 and 4 is 8. So right away, to me, that's not going to work. But the 4 and 5 is 9, 450. Well, it turns out that all East Indian music is tuned to 450, which is an earth resonant scale. We tested it. We researched it. I mean, we spent a year researching it. There's papers on it. I sent you some of that research. And what we saw is that by people just listening to this music, which is all done with the human voice, not electronics. Remember, electronics does not have harmonics. So you have to have the harmonics. That's what the ear falls in love with. Pythagoras said harmonics are what heals, right? So you have to have those harmonics. So I sang every single note 12 times to give it a deep field of harmonics so that the body would be really friendly to it, right? So people will, if they listen to it for an hour, the body would become 90% coherent. That's unheard of. So it proves to me that that frequency, that 7.83, that tuning is something that the body is really responding to.
Yeah, and we'll come back to the original tuning as well. Wasn't it at 432 hertz? And that comes back into sacred as well, because 4 plus 3 is 7 and then 2 is 9. So yeah, I thought the original scale was 432, and then that again that brings us to 9. And Tesla was all right. Nikola Tesla is always about frequency at 9.
Right. So 432 was what, didn't they call that Verdi's tuning? So that's what the old composers, that's what they used. Yeah. That's right.
So we start to get this, what is it with these frequency patterns of 9s that keep occurring again and again? Because when you look at even Buddhist traditions, 108 times that you would sing the mantra, there you go, 1 plus 8 is 9. But you start to see these recurring again and again of this 9s, these 3s, these 6s of 9s. Even in even in the Bible, we have the Trinity, 3, and times 3 is 9. Why do we get all these same numbers occurring across the planet? And they've been so ingrained in religion and legend and ancient history that you just can't dismiss it as something that's, well, those numbers were just, they're randomly there. I mean, all these numerical codings are inside all of the traditions across the planet.
Right, that's right. 9 is the number of completion, so, I mean, it's all about 3, 6s, 9s, 12, 18, whatever. I run my life according to those numbers, it has to come. You'd have to be able to break it down to a 3. So I think there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, because in China, when you come over here into Asia, and if you hang out in China, Taiwan, Singapore, anywhere like this for a while, you start to see the 36 and 72 protector gods. Now, you can't tell me that ingrained within ancient Chinese culture, they have exactly 36 gods, and then they have a full round 72. You can't tell me that these two sides are lining up like they even just the deities in the Beidou Qixing, which is the Big Dipper cult.
And speaking of agriculture and other things that can enhance our lives, I wanted to talk about CBD oil for just a second here, and I do thank Hemp Lucid for making this production possible. These days, CBD oil is becoming extremely popular for all of the good that it can do for your health. And doing a bit of research online, there's so much information coming out now detailing how effective CBD oil is for pain, anxiety, stress, and even some chronic illnesses. And moving forward in the whole grain debacle with the grand solar minimum cooling, hemp is going to be a major part of us transitioning to a new protein source in the seeds. But at the same time, the CBD industry is expanding. And as an example of this, Hemp Lucid, the most wholesome and most potent raw hemp extractions available. When you use Hemp Lucid products every day, you'll feel the benefits of mind, body, and spirit. You can see the full range of their products at hemplucid.com. You'll be amazed at the balance you feel. You'll find that link below and all the articles we're talking about in our discussion today in the description box below.
I'm your host, David DuByne, creator of the ADAPT 2030 channel on YouTube. And I'm here today with Kate Hart, the Radical Gardener. You can find her work at radicalgardener.net, katehart.com, and therapeuticsoundandwellness.com. Now, before the break, we were talking about Schumann resonance, frequencies on the planet, and ancient cultures with numerology in the 3, 6, and 9s. I was bringing up the point that in ancient Chinese traditions that they had a part of Taoism that was specifically focused on following the Big Dipper and the pole star. They were so focused on it that the emperors and all this was pervasive through China, Korea, and Japan, that they had entire sects that were devoted of just to follow the changes in the heavens because they saw these larger cycles that were somehow correlated with movements of the Big Dipper around the pole star. Now, this is really interesting when you get in because, it brings us right back to 36 deities, which is a 9. Also, when we come down, they had 3 sets they almost have a trinity as well, but 3 trinities equals 9. And we find these same things going back in much more ancient traditions and much longer cycles of time. So my question to you, Kate, is we were talking a little bit before the interview about, intuitively going back and following these longer cycles of time to try to get a gauge of what we can see moving into the future with the earth changes that we're seeing. Because we've experienced before. It's just a cycle. Now, which cycle are we on? Because I talk to people who are saying that, it's going to be a 400-year cycle. And then I talk to others who say, whoa, we are going into a much heavier, much more powerful overriding cycle. The 4s are inside that, but we're going to be getting something that's more powerful in the cyclic nature of everything. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's cycles within cycles within cycles. That's what I think. I think it's almost impossible to pinpoint where we're at and, how long we've got or, where we're going. I mean, it's everything on this planet is cyclic. In the universe, in the galaxy, it's cyclic. So, what are we talking about here? I absolutely don't have an answer. I just know that we move in cycles and just, which one are we following?
Yeah, that's a really good question because, how many of the ancient traditions are pointing to this time at some sort of change spiritually, evolution-wise? There's almost every culture across the planet and every continent across the planet, and whatever belief system is on any continent across this planet is pointing to this time where there's some type of, it could be an energetic change because we find these, like Robert Felix's book, Evolutionary Jumps. And you talk about magnetic pole reversals and different types of energy waves coming through that cause sort of instant change in species across the planet. Don't know what the energetic wave is. It could be radiation particles. It could be cosmic rays. Who knows? But they talk about these evolutionary jumps. Now, it doesn't have to be in a physical sense. It could be also in this density sense as well, because we talk about Vedic traditions. We're coming out of the Kali Yuga and we're becoming more light each day, where the vibrational frequency of our planet's changing to where we get a little bit higher vibration each day. And you can see why a lot of these older archaic systems are starting to crumble, because literally they just can't exist in this new vibrational frequency. So you're seeing them fall away. And I think these changes all have something to do with perhaps if Indian Vedic traditions are mapping out these yugas on 25,000-year cycles as well. And then how many of those have they mapped out? They've mapped out millions of years of these cycles. So what kind of God beings or, types of entities were around when they, what about 2 million years ago? I mean, Indian Vedic traditions are talking about these same exact things. And how many times has this occurrence of coming out of the darkest time, literally we went down to the lowest vibrational frequency a human can actually exist in before. That's it. There's no lower. But how many times during an interglacial have we hit this exact bottom point and started to ascend out? And then during these interglacials that only last 10,000 years anyway, how many times were we in the mid-period where we were much higher vibrationally? Or how many times in the interglacial were we at the apex of the golden ages? So there's so many cycles within cycles, not just on the earth changes. Okay, I understand that. We got all these things going on of mini cycles, 200, 400 years, 3,200 years, ice ages, grand ice ages on 400,000-year cycles. But within that whole thing, the human experience in that, because the human population grows during these interglacials. You always find the human species, the humankind is always reduced down in population during ice ages. There's very few humans on the planet during a full-blown ice age. Right. We've always expanded during these interglacials. And then you start to overlap all these spiritual traditions and, the cognitive energies and intuitiveness and all these other things we get as we come in and out of these 10,000-year periods that allow us to grow in population.
Well, who touches on a lot of that, too, is the book. I'm sure you've read it or know about it. Is it Michael Cremo, Forbidden Archaeology?
Incredible read. Anybody who has not read that, I highly encourage you to see what's hidden from you.
Yeah. Let's go to the basement of the Smithsonian, which, by the way, is a government agency. Everybody should know that. But But yeah, I mean, there's I love the story about the steel balls that have 3 lines on them. They found hundreds of them that are at least 1 million years old. I think that was somewhere in Mississippi or Tennessee or something. I mean, there's so much evidence that we've been here for a very, very long time. Yes, absolutely. So, and what was the one thing that they always worshipped? And it was the sun. It was always the sun. As a matter of fact, I think that the Great Pyramid, with the looks like a man's head on it. I really think that used to be a lion's head. That head doesn't look like it's the right size. It doesn't really look like it fits the pyramid. And I think that a lion's head was on that pyramid because it has the paws, and it's facing Leo. It's facing the sun.
Yeah, for this particular circulation around in the 25,000 year precession of the equinoxes, but perhaps it's even older, where maybe that's one previous precession facing Leo. There's some technologies and hidden history from us, and I really am starting to delve into these Kalahari ruins. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with what's going on in the Botswana area. If you go into the Kalahari Desert, they're finding mega cities and irrigation canals. And you're talking about raised beds, Kate, but they had these raised bed systems within the canals as well, that it's 300 and some square miles. And they were saying that they diverted the Okavango Delta to feed these canals first, and then it ran out into what we consider the Okavango Delta today, where all the water's pooling, and you can take safaris there, and you can do all these things with the animals and check out the wildlife habitat. But at some time prior, they had set up a massive irrigation system out there with raised beds. And these irrigation systems are all about 750 feet apart. So it's really interesting how nothing in nature could be that way. And it's 350 square miles. And they were saying if you put this into full food growing capacity as we do today with what we see planetary wide in the agriculture system, if we could get it just to the average, not even to the maximum, to the average, they were saying that area alone could feed 6 billion people. Which
gosh.
Yeah, it begs the question, okay, that's one thing that's strange in itself in the Kalahari ruins, and they're finding megacities down there, and they all have spirals, and they're finding spirals all over the place down there. Irrigation canals are one thing, but you got to think about the shipping and logistics. If you're going to grow the planetary food supply there in this one single tiny location, how did they distribute that around the planet?
Yeah, right.
And they're showing that there was a massive tidal wave that had come in from the Atlantic Ocean that ran, 1,000 miles inland. So they're talking about catastrophic earth changes, but saying, wait a second, we have this advanced culture with massive agriculture way down in an area that's uninhabitable today. Very few people living down there. You have a few exceptional people in tune with nature that are living in the desert conditions. But what kind of waves would drive 1,000 miles inland and cover part of these cities under sand? And now they're starting to find all these things. It's just really amazing. There's definitely a lost piece of history down there. And how old is that really? Yeah,
that's huge. And what about the they're called the Snake Kings, that huge area in the jungles of Guatemala. Have you been following that at all?
No, but I've been down to Guatemala this is a funny thing, Y2K. We rousted up a bunch of us, and we went and spent the night from 1999 to the year 2000 on the Celestial Mayan Observatory in El Mirador in the Guatemalan rainforest. It took us 3 days to walk in with the guide, and we camped up and we set up, spent a week there around El Mirador during the changeover and all that kind of stuff. So yes, I've been down there. But at that time there was none of this satellite photography and all these
residents. Yeah, that's how they found it. Absolutely. So, but there's miles and miles and miles of this ancient city, and the thing that they found out already is how they gathered water. So they too were really sophisticated in, how they grew their food and how they gathered water. So their irrigation system is really sophisticated. Now, whenever mainstream archaeologists talk about how old a place is, I figure it's probably 3 times older than that. So, because we've got our timelines all screwed up. But anyways, so that's something to keep your eye on, because, boy, that's really got some great information in it.
Let's take a minute to talk about one of the sponsors of Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast, Hemp Lucid. I actually wanted to talk about hemp a little bit myself because I believe that the transition of agriculture in the grand solar minimum is going to involve hemp for different protein sources and also fibers, as some grain crops go offline due to cold encroaching in the grow zones. And this is why I feel confident recommending Hemp Lucid over other CBD brands. And hemp is truly an amazing plant. We've been using this since antiquity. It's a versatile plant in nature. It has fiber, it has protein, has everything we need as a human species. Now, in 2014, there was a congressional farm bill where industrial hemp was reintroduced as an agricultural commodity in the United States. Through the millennia, the benefits of the hemp plant were well known. Hemp agriculture dates back at least 10,000 years. There's thousands and thousands of known applications for hemp. I mean, really, look around you. Almost everything that you see right now could be made from hemp. Biodegradable, renewable, and we can use every part of the plant. It's a superfood, if you will. I talk about Moringa oleifera, spirulina algae. Well, here's another superfood, hemp. It promotes natural well-being anyway if you just eat the protein-rich seeds as you would with, say, sorghum or millet or amaranth. It's right in that same category of healthy, nutritious plants. And when you're feeling better, your energy levels are higher. That is a fact. I don't care what grain you're eating. If you're eating right, you're sleeping better, more energy. And the health benefits of all these other grains I mentioned, including hemp, are well tested in clinical studies. There are literally millions of published papers on the science of how these grains, including hemp, work in your body. Now, one particular category of hemp products called CBD oil, it's been in the news a lot recently. CBD is a biochemical compound found abundantly in the hemp plant, not just the seeds, not just the leaves, the entire plant. The hemp CBD oil has a perfect lock and key relationship with the cell receptors, not only in your brain, but widespread throughout your body, providing you a wider spectrum of subtle but noticeable improvements for your mind, body, and spirit. And Hemp Lucid is becoming an innovative force in this blossoming industry, providing pure, delicious, effective Colorado hemp CBD oil, all natural, non-psychoactive extract of the entire plant, not just the isolated CBD molecule. And it doesn't have any of the euphoric properties normally associated with the cannabis plant. Now, talking about extraction methods, with Hemp Lucid, they don't use any solvents or additives, nothing artificial. And while you are looking for an extract, you need to look for clean, pure, and also that the chemical structure of the ingredients remain fully intact. Hemp-derived CBD oil is legal in the United States. It has multiple valuable uses in everyday life. Hemp Lucid strives to continue the work of nature in the human body using only the purest ingredients, and they do mean it when they say experience life again. Give their oils a try and at least learn more about the subject of CBD oil at hemplucid.com and use the discount code ADAPT at checkout to save 20% on your total order.
And again, when you're coming down to our modern era here, I mean, if these cycles are repeating as such, and we can start to see, at least in the 400-year cycle, it's quite easy to see that it's a repeating thing. Come back to the modern minimum, that's super easy. We have written records. But why is this timeline always being put out? And you talk about the Smithsonian and the Vatican hiding so much of this information that they'd taken from these ancient cultures when the explorers went out since the 1400s. You know, there's so much of this timeline that's being purposely fed to us of, we started here, it's linear, we had horse and buggy, and then we moved to the wheel, and now we have automobiles, and now we have airplanes. And there was nothing before that. Everybody was just living in stick and mud huts, and it makes no sense.
Well,
if we had the brain capacity as we do today, why nobody would be evolving over these hundreds of thousands or millions of years?
Right. You know, I don't, I'm going to send this to you in an email because I don't have the book at my fingertips, but it's a Russian astronomer. He's a mathematician, and through astronomy, he has made a revamped timeline of our historical narrative. It is brilliant. He's got like 7 volumes. I mean, the timeline that he drew out is like miles long, and we suspect, and I've had a discussion with many people about this because that I find it upsetting that we don't know our historical truth. And so is that it was to hide atrocities that were committed by the church. So by just eliminating these huge, years and years of time, we don't even acknowledge a lot of the atrocities that were committed. Now, this is, suspecting the Jesuits are really famous for changing the historical narrative. So, but through this man's work, this Russian astronomer, it starts to paint a very different picture of what we've been told. I'll make sure to get that to you because, David, I think you'd find it really interesting.
Right, because I wanted to talk about your work here for a moment with therapeutic sound and wellness. We discussed about orgonite, and I've experimented with some orgonite, putting sound jacks in it and then using a sound frequency program on the computer and sending a sound wave through the copper wire onto the crystal in its matrix inside the acrylic there that it hardened, surfboard resin basically. So these vibrational frequencies, and for sure when you hit seeds with a different type of electrical, I should say, voltages, you can also change what comes out of that seed in terms of a plant. There was some work done, and then apparently those people died mysteriously when they put seeds and then they would send different electrical wave frequencies into them along with sound, and they got what came out of the seed after it grew was quite a bit different on the yield than what was predicted. So literally sound and electricity, electromagnetism can change how seeds produce yield. And also putting sound frequency in to help plants grow better. You alluded to that when you were first talking. You said that you put now sound to the plants. Yes. I wanted to touch on this because it goes right into this part of ancient history that's been so lost about, why do the monks, why do they always have these certain frequencies that ohm? There's these resonant frequencies that are always ingrained within the traditions as well. This frequency is a base core of most traditions across the planet religiously. Even the Amen is part of the Om. I mean, it has that same frequency. So that's where I wanted to go with this, on the sound resonance for plants, as well as what we see with healing and different types of wellness and balance.
Yeah, well, I'm now playing the music. The music I'm using, the music we research, we call it Psionic 3, and Psionic actually it's means language of frequency. So we've started to use it on the plants, and so I have a group of plants that aren't listening to the sound, and then a group that are, and it's they're growing 3 times as fast and they're 3 times as healthy. So it makes sense because the music that I'm using, it is earth resonant, and it is really, it has deep harmonic field. But what we want to do next, David, is we want to take that and somehow, and I have a friend that is an electrician and a homeopathic doctor, actually, and we want to find a way of taking those frequencies and running them like through copper and putting it into the beds. So we're talking about doing that next, and we'll probably do it within the next month. So I'll keep you in the loop on that. But I'd like to get it so where it's actually connecting with the roots of the vegetables and just see what happens, So, but yeah, I've also seen that that about 3 hours is enough. Like the plant doesn't want to have it more to do. You see the plants start to almost kind of weaken a little bit. So 3 hours seems to be the max to play the music for the plant to get the benefits of the resonance.
And I do thank Hemp Lucid for making this production possible. The most wholesome and most potent raw hemp extractions available. You can see the full range of their products at hemplucid.com. You'll be amazed at the balance you feel.